This is a job that I've been putting off for quite a while, and I'll show you why. Today we're installing the gas bottle storage for my van, which means I've paid about 500 bucks for a glorified box, and we have to cut another giant hole in the side of my van. Now, this is a legality thing for Australia. You're not allowed to have your gas stored inside the actual vehicle. So by adding in this box, technically it's still outside the van. I've had this custom ordered from RV Campervan Solutions, as to be honest with you, it was the only website in Australia I found that made these, but it has been custom made to go with the ribs on the outside of my van. So once it's all in, it should sit nice and flush. I opted for their largest gas bottle holder, which has meant that the only space that I can install it without taking out one of these support ribs is smack bang in the middle of the van. It's not super ideal, as I would have liked to hide it either at the back or the front in amongst my cabinetry, but as it stands, we're gonna have to make the best of this and sort of build my furniture around it. So now we're gonna have to spend a little bit of time measuring everything out and marking it, so I know that when we cut this hole, it's gonna slip in nice and fit the contours of the van. Before we go any further, I've got to remove this little black bit of metal. It's not structural, it was just there to give the door card something to lock into, and right now it's in the way, so it's gone. She's out, so the next part of the process is just a ton of measuring and marking so we can figure out exactly where we want to cut this hole. I think the hardest part of this process is definitely going to be the measuring and marking. So I'm going to walk you through all the steps I've done to get mine in the right place, and hopefully that'll help you out at home. Now, there's no reference or instructions that comes with the box, so this is going to be my method for installing the box in the right spot. Now, the first thing I've done, I'm measuring from the base of the box up to the indent of this curve, and that's going to give me an approximate feel for what the height of the box is going to be in relation to the floor. There to there, it's about 290. So you can see there, that's that same indent I've just measured to. So if we start there as a reference, we go down. It's looking like 290, 300. Is going to actually end up sitting pretty close to flush on the floor, which is fantastic. Now, I'm going to be building my bed frame hard up against where this box finishes. So there's a little bit of wiggle room in between here. So I'm going to be marking from the furthest point to the left to give me as much extra space in my bed frame as possible. So to give myself that reference, we're going to be marking straight in line with this support beam here to the outside. Drill a pilot hole, and then we'll measure the rest across from the outside. So I've got my angle here and ever so slightly to the right of that. So now we can drill that pilot hole from the outside, and this officially marks the point of no return. And there's the outside wall. So I've got my pilot hole here. I'm using this furthest indent as my reference point. That's going to give me my level and also my only accurate reference on the actual box. So on my paper here, I've marked out total height, the hole has to be 420 and the total length 395. And using that line, I know directionally has to be 120 millimeters above that line and 300 below. To get that, I marked from the box to the crease there on both sides, and then also measured the total length. I'm confident that that marking on there will line the contours up perfectly. So now I'm going to do 2 more pilot holes on the inside at the top and the bottom of where that's going to be to give me my vertical line. And then using the calculations I just made, I can draw up my template to cut on the outside of the van. I have my 3 pilot holes as my reference line for the outside. Now I'm going to tape up this line and start marking out where the rest of that box is going to fit in. I can use this line here to make sure my vertical line is straight, and this one for my horizontal line. So first thing I want to do is make sure this line's accurate from the outside. So we're going to make sure it's straight to start off with. We're going to go 3 mils up from this line. That's 3 there. We're going to do a couple more markings on all the contours to get this nice and straight. That should give us the average for all of these points. There's my first line. So now we have to get the height off this. 120 up from that crease. Now 300 down. It's a start. Now my vertical line is 395. I'm going to mark that from that line across, just so I can get my tape on. So let's put the tape on that point and then we'll mark it properly. 395, it's there. That looks pretty spot on to me. It's getting warm out here, eh? So now we're going to do the height thing again, 120 up. That right there is looking pretty spot on. The main thing to check is that the lips of it are going to cover your markings either way. Got a little bit of wiggle room there, just in case that marking's not perfect. Now we've got to zip tie all these wires right out the way. Now with those wires out the way, we're just going to drill reference holes in all the corners to see how that's going to look on the inside. So there we've got my 4 reference holes on the outside. I can see that's not going to hit anything. So now we can go ahead and cut out the actual panel. we go, she's out. I never enjoyed cutting large holes out of the bodywork, but that seems to go all right. Now we're just gonna try to fit that box in and, like, fingers crossed, I've done it in the right spot. And now for the only part that you actually want to see. Have I done this properly? We're doing this live. I don't know how it's gonna go either. Fingers crossed. Oh, bro, come on. So far, so good. Yo, come on. How much better do you want it? Bro. We're gonna have to pack out the inside ever so slightly, but that's bloody spot on, mate. So now you can see how the box is sitting inside the van, and the only thing is it's about 12-15 mil off the ground. So we're gonna get some offcuts of plywood to build a little base for it, and then we can go ahead and silicone it in. I'm currently working on a base plate for here. So in order to get that down to the right height, I have to buzz down a couple lengths of some scrap plywood, and that should give us something nice and solid to glue our box down into. So at this height here, everything's looking pretty flush from the outside. So we can go ahead and fix down that base plate and then attach the box to it. All right, so for the base plate, we're gonna be using a little bit of liquid nails, as well as a few screws. All right, now for the second layer, we're gonna place them approximately in the middle, and we'll use liquid nails and 2 screws, just like the other one. Next up, we're just gonna chuck a little bit of primer on the bare metal that we've cut today, just to seal it off and stop it from rusting out. So I'm currently working on installing this door hinge. Basically lines up flush either side like so, and then it's going to swing up from the bottom. So now to install this, I'm going to be using a couple of screws, probably 3 screws either side, and a little bit of silicone. But before I do that, unfortunately it hasn't quite been cut to size, so it's popping out at the moment. Just have to do a little buzz down at the edge to make that sit nice and flush. All right, that's sitting in there a lot better. The first thing we're gonna do is mount the top, and then we can do the same for the bottom. With those holes drilled, next job is to attach it. So for this, we're using Sika 291. It is marine silicone, which is gonna bond very well with the fiberglass and be absolutely waterproof. All right, with the screws and the silicone, bottom side of that hinge is on. So now we can start working on that door. That lid is now on, so we can go ahead and put it inside the cavity. Now, this is gonna be a little bit hectic, but we have to do both of our attachments at the same time. So first I'm gonna go inside and apply my liquid nails to my base plate, and then we're gonna be loading up the outside of this box with my silicone and pushing that all in at the same time to allow it to cure overnight. So first step's gonna be loading up this base plate with the liquid nails. I'm gonna be going absolutely silly with it, so this box is never gonna come out. Now the next step, and with daylight fading, it's going to be to load up the back of this box with as much silicone as possible, and then we can leave that to bond with the metal of the van overnight. All right, let's plonk it in. To help it set nice and tight to the body, I brought the van up next to the house and just used a bunch of wood to push it in while it sets overnight. I did run out of silicone yesterday, so now before I do my final beat around, I'm just gonna go into any little gaps that may still be left off to make sure it's fully sealed. Now that we've done our final coat of silicone, I'm gonna take all the tape off, and then we're gonna stick the props back on for the rest of the day and leave that to dry. That final bead's all done now. So I'm just gonna chuck the props back on, and then I'll probably have to go over all these lines one more time in any places where the silicone gets squashed out and bubbles. All right, that's all done for now. We just have to leave that to set for the rest of the day, and then we can focus on putting the hardware in. So it's been about 18 months since that last clip, which is a little bit crazy, but the advantage is it's all done, and I can actually show you the finished system. So if we open that up, you can see the gas bottle all installed and secured. I made a little jig to hold it into place, and I've got a tie down strap just to fix it in and swap it out for a quick changeover. Now all the gas work and the pipes has to be done by a qualified plumber for you to legally have this in your camper van. So I've got a plumber friend to install all the piping for me. When I travel, the gas bottle stays off, But for the sake of this demo, we'll switch her on like so, to the regulator in there as well, and I'll show you how my cooker works inside the van. So this is another little sneak preview of the finished van, but you'll see the whole thing develop as we finish this series. Right here I installed my domestic cooktop, and that hooks into the gas line, which is built in and around my cabinetry. Now the gas bottle storage is actually in here, which is why we've got a bit of a shallower cupboard, but trying to make most of that space. You can see the difference in those there. Now everything needs a bit of a clean because I've just come back from a trip, but for the sake of a demo, let's fire this one up. Got my small flame, my large flame, gas is running, and there we go. Really is a awesome little cooker. Now I tried to use this cooker too often just to keep the space in the van nice. Generally you'll find me cooking outdoors on my portable stove. However, as we move into winter with the possibility of some stormier trips, having the option to be able to cook really good food without having to leave the confines of the van was something that I prioritized. That cooker's the main thing we use the gas bottle for. However, I'm also going to be installing a portable shower. We can hook up a removable gas water heater up here with the shower tent on the outside, and that will fold straight in, and I can use the gas for that too. So that's my gas bottle storage and my cooker install. It has been over a year since I've recorded and uploaded some footage, but life does get in the way. The van's done, which is really cool. I've got a lot of footage banked, but I am still committed to finish off the YouTube side of this van build. I love this hobby, I love camping, and I'm really proud of the work I have done here, and I want to help other people build spaces that they can be proud of too. So there's a good chance that I now have a dead YouTube channel, but also that's never really what it's been about. For anyone that is still following this series a year later, I really appreciate that. Hopefully your van's done. I am going to get the rest of this series out and hopefully continue to help people in the van build space. Thank you for watching, thank you for your patience, and do subscribe to see the rest of this build because it's on the way. Thanks guys.